Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Bethany Lewis, and I'm a life coach that loves to be inspired. I'm using this channel as a way to record some of the inspiration that has come my way, and I hope you find it as inspiring as I have. Enjoy. The topic for today's class is where your power lies. This is a concept that has been present in my mind for years, but has solidified more as I've been involved in the coaching world and witnessed coaching. It's a concept that comes up over and over again in some way or another, and I believe it is a powerful principle that, when not properly understood, leads to so much misery, and when understood, is absolutely freeing and transformative. If we can get really crystal clear on where our own power lies, it will resolve or at least soften so many of the problems we face in life. What do I mean by power? The New Oxford American Dictionary defines power as the capacity or ability to direct or influence the behavior of others or the course of events. I'm going to alter that definition slightly for our purposes here. Power, as I'm defining it, is the capacity or ability to direct or influence one's thoughts and or behavior, and to some degree, the course of events of one's life. I'm going to be focusing on the thoughts and behavior part, not as much on the course of events, but please note that the course of events in our lives is significantly influenced by our thoughts and behavior. There are a few things that happen totally outside of our control, but so much of our experience in life is directly a result of our own thoughts and behavior. So again, power, as I'm defining it, is the capacity or ability to direct or influence one's thoughts and or behavior, and to some degree, the course of events in one's life. So often, so much of the pain we experience is because we mistakenly put our power in the wrong place. We believe that other people or situations have power over us. In other words, we try to give our power away to them, or we think that we have more power over other people than we do. We give ourselves credit for the thoughts and beliefs of others, which are not within our power. It is a confusion about where the power lies that causes heartbreak and emotional pain. Let's break down each of these problems with power, giving ours away and thinking that we have more than we do. Giving our power away. Anytime we say that someone else made us feel anything, we are giving our power away. Remember, our definition of power is the capacity or ability to direct or influence one's thoughts and or behavior. So often we try handing that ability to others. Jody Moore uses the analogy of this being like giving the remote control of our feelings to someone else. It's like saying, here, take this remote and make sure you only push the buttons that make me feel good about myself, and make sure you don't ever push any of the buttons that make me feel any negative emotions, but you have total control of the remote. It's a terrible idea, really. No one else is going to know the best way for you to be feeling at any given time, and we don't want to be giving that kind of control over our emotions to anyone else. Here are some phrases that can be red flags for us, signals that we are trying to give our power away. If you find yourself or someone you love saying any of these things, take note. He made me feel bad. She hurt my feelings. You ruined my life. When we say or think these kinds of things, we are putting ourselves squarely in victim mode, and that doesn't serve us at all. When we take victim status, our energy and mental efforts are spent thinking about how unfair life is and how crappy other people are, and we give very little time or energy to coming up with creative solutions to the problems we're experiencing. When we think that what other people say or do makes us feel anything, we are handing that remote right on over. I know that this might be kind of hard to accept. It seems so obvious that what people say or do does impact us. And yes, people do have influence on each other, but others only have influence on us as far as we allow it. I was thinking about the phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. And I decided that I don't believe that's entirely true. Words are powerful, very much so. And that's why we have inspirational speeches and self-help podcasts and books that make an impact. That's why there's such a thing as verbal abuse and propaganda, and movies like Inception that demonstrate how much ideas communicated through words can influence us. The impact of words and ideas is real, but on a deeper level, it's our thoughts that give power to those words. Our thoughts are the real powerhouse. Words can only hurt or help as far as our thoughts to believe them allow. I love the quote from Eleanor Roosevelt that says, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." It's so true. People can say all kinds of horrible things with the intent of making you feel inferior, but unless you choose to believe them on some level, their words cannot have that effect. And conversely, people can say things that were not intended to be offensive, and yet we can choose to feel inferior or offended anyway. The power really is in our own thoughts. I think that the following illustration is really helpful in understanding this idea, and it's one of my favorite analogies. Imagine that someone comes up to you and says, "I hate that green shirt you're wearing. It's hideous and is a terrible color on you." Then you look down and see that you're wearing a blue shirt today. Those words, which could be thought of as horribly offensive, wouldn't land at all because they're just so blatantly wrong. You'd probably be more confused than anything because you're not wearing a green shirt and you know it. It's the same with anything that anyone says to us. Our internal filter gets to decide whether to give credence to their words or not, and therein lies the offense or lack thereof. Brigham Young is credited as saying, "He who takes offense when no offense is intended is a fool, and he who takes offense when offense is intended is a greater fool." I've always loved this statement because it shows how much feeling offended is a choice and a foolish one. At least it's one worth questioning. When we start to feel upset by something someone says or does, we would be wise to pause, recognize that feeling for what it is, and get curious about it. If we can intentionally stop ourselves from flying down the drama path and question our automatic thoughts, we'll gain so much leverage over the problems in our lives. So if someone says something and your defenses shoot up, get curious about that. Pause and ask yourself, what am I making it mean? Usually, if there's emotional pain happening, it's because you're questioning whether the things they said could be true on some level. And if so, you're making it mean something bad about yourself. Often it's some version of I'm a failure, or I'm not lovable, or I'm worthless. Let me tell you the good news. That is categorically not true. None of us are worthless. Every single human is 100% worthy of love, and that includes you. It's also true that all of us are part amazing and part hot mess. We are lovable regardless of the good and bad within us. So maybe that person was totally off when they made accusations against us. Maybe they were 100% wrong about us. That's okay. They can be wrong about us. And their intended offense doesn't have to land at all. But maybe some of the things they said about us are true, at least to some degree. Maybe that shirt really isn't the best shade for our skin tone. That's all okay too. We are not perfect, but we hopefully are trying for at least gradual improvement. It's okay to admit that we have faults and that we fall short in some areas sometimes. We can give ourselves grace and give the offenders grace as well. Everyone's just trying their best, and sometimes our best and theirs is pretty bad. It's okay. We keep on keeping on. The same goes with situations in our lives. We want to tell ourselves that we're the victim of circumstance and we're stuck, we're trapped, we're overwhelmed, and it's the situation that is crappy and there's nothing we can do about it. This too is false. We want to believe it because it's a lot easier to complain about things and wallow in misery than to do the thought work it would take to change our minds about the situation or to work to change the situation itself. And that's okay. There's no judgment here. We all do it. Our brains are wired to, like electricity, take the path of least resistance. But let's just be onto our brains and recognize that we still get to decide how we feel, regardless of the situations around us. It's a sometimes hard, but also hopeful thing that this statement by Russell M. Nelson is so true. The joy we feel has little to do with the circumstances of our lives and everything to do with the focus of our lives. Where we place our focus and attention is truly what we're going to have manifest in our lives. If we spend our time thinking about how bad a situation is, that badness will grow and our brains will find all the evidence to support the belief that it's painful and negative. But I promise it's true that if we decide to focus our attention on the good in a situation, that too will grow and our brains will find evidence to support that belief. Sometimes it takes more intentional effort to find the good and focus on it, but I can tell you from years of experience that it works and it's worth the effort. It's okay to recognize that things are hard, to process grief or pain, and to cry it out sometimes. I know it's not all rainbows and sunshine, but no matter how dark or all-encompassing the clouds may seem, there are linings, and I'd like to argue that they're silver. I want to mention one more thing about these lines, and this is going to get a little bigger picture and sorry, let me go back here. I want to mention one more thing along these lines, and this is going to get a little bigger picture and philosophical and even religious, but I trust you to interpret it through whatever lens makes sense to you. I just want to share the things that help me gain greater understanding and perspective and offer it to you to take or leave however you choose. I won't choose to be offended if you decide not to pick up what I'm sharing here. There are scriptures that point out that man, meaning mankind, is here to act and not be acted upon. We have the ability to think through things, to interpret them as we please, and to act based on what we believe is best. We have been given the incredible gift of agency to choose how we will respond to life's challenges and triumphs, and it's not a gift to be taken lightly. The reason that gift is possible is because of Jesus Christ. Because of the fall of Adam, this human family was separated from God and unable to return. The fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil gave us exactly that. It introduced evil and prevented us from being in God's presence. Thanks to Jesus Christ and his perfect atoning sacrifice, light and glory and peace are also options on the table for us. Because of him, we get to have a choice between good and evil, between light and dark. Without him, there would be no choice, only darkness. but with him and through him, we have the ability to turn from darkness towards light and let that light fill our hearts and minds and souls. It is powerful and it is possible, and it is because of him that we have that goodness available. This is why we have so much power to choose for ourselves, our thoughts and behavior. Let's own that power and not give it away. I love this quote by Viktor Frankl in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. So remember, if you find yourself wanting to blame someone or something else for negative feelings you're having, it's helpful to take a step back and figure out what it is that is really causing the frustration and hurt. And I promise it's because of your own thoughts, not the words or actions of others or the situation you're in. Take that power back and don't give anyone or anything else the remote. Okay, let's switch gears now and talk about the opposite issue with power, mistakenly believing you can take it on yourself other people's power. Remember, power as we're defining it is the capacity or ability to direct or influence one's thoughts and or behavior. It happens all the time that people think they have more power over others than they do. We all do this. We want to give ourselves credit for other people's feelings. I had a dear friend talk to me about her struggles about prepping for Christmas. She felt so much anxiety and pressure to make sure it was perfect for everyone. She wanted so badly for it to be meaningful and spiritual and fun, and that everyone would have a wonderful time. We discussed how no matter what she did, however much preparation and purposeful present purchasing she did, she literally could not control how her kids would feel about their experience of Christmas. They were going to feel exactly how they wanted to feel based on their thoughts. I'm sure we've all had experiences where we've done everything we could to try to make someone else's life easier in some way, or give them the gift that would make their heart explode with happiness, only to have them respond in a way that indicated that they did not acknowledge or appreciate our efforts, and that their heart was perfectly intact and not exploded. We can then be tempted to feel disappointed. I imagine you can all relate to the opposite kind of experience, where you give someone, say a toddler, a present that you think is great, and they do think the gift is awesome, but it's the wrapping paper or the box that is the best part. We cannot control how other people receive what we offer to them, and we can't take credit for other people's feelings, whether they're positive or negative. Again, I think it's understandable that we try to. We are told as children to be careful what we say and do because we don't want to make anyone else feel bad. In our efforts to socialize our kids and our parents' efforts to socialize us, false ideas about where power lies are propagated. And as I mentioned earlier, I do think our words and actions can have an impact on others to a degree. We absolutely can make it easier for people to have positive or negative emotions, or to believe positive or negative things about themselves based on our interactions with them. But ultimately, it is their thoughts that determine their experiences, just as much as it is our thoughts that determine ours. One of my favorite poems of all time is by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. It reads, "One ship drives east and another drives west with the selfsame winds that blow. 'Tis the set of the sails and not the gales that tells us the way to go. Like the winds of the sea are the ways of fate as we voyage along through the life. 'Tis the set of a soul that decides its goal and not the calm or the strife." I loved this poem before I had any experience sailing, but after having been on a sailboat, it is even more meaningful to me. It's so cool to see that the direction the boat heads when there's wind is 100% determined by the set of the sails. Two boats can go opposite directions with the same wind providing the momentum, solely based on how their sails are positioned. Each individual gets to position their own sails, and while we can try to provide education and instruction and assistance, the direction they head is theirs to choose. This is helpful to remember when we are parenting or teaching a class or trying to make an impact on anyone in any way. Our job is to show up for the people in our lives in the way that feels truest to the person we want to be, and then we get to let them decide what to do with our efforts, whether to pick them up or leave them. The choice is ultimately theirs. We see this confusion as to who has the power over other people's emotions in people pleasing. People pleasing is when we try to make others like us or be happy with our decisions by saying or doing what we think they want us to, regardless of whether or not it's something we actually want ourselves. I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to be liked or wanting to make things easier for others. The problem arises when we're not true to ourselves in the process, when we speak or behave in ways that don't feel authentic solely for the purpose of pleasing someone else. An interesting point that I heard Jody Moore make is that when we say we'd love to do something that we really don't want to do, we're lying. Saying yes to things we don't want is being deceitful. That was a very interesting concept to me. I believed that serving was good, so therefore it's always good to say yes, right? But I believed that lying was bad. So that opened my mind to the possibility that whether I choose to say yes to requests for help is really truly up to me and how I feel. I want to be true to my higher self. And sometimes that means saying yes to service opportunities, and sometimes it means saying no. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I absolutely believe that there are instances where it's beneficial to ourselves and others to buck up and commit and do things that we don't necessarily feel like doing. But if we're going to do that, we need to own the decision and not go into it feeling bitter and annoyed because we were asked to do it or that we're doing it now. But if we pile up commitments to the point of not taking care of ourselves or those we are closest to, in order to avoid feeling bad about saying no, we're actually being detrimental to ourselves and those we have responsibility for. And the reason we want to say yes all the time as people pleasers, it's because we think we have control over other people's thoughts and opinions. We think that through our behavior, we can make other people like us or make them feel good. But again, that power is out of our control. It's all theirs. They get to decide if they like us, and they get to decide if they feel good about their life. Let them have that. Let it go. So in conclusion, let's get really clear on where our power lies. Let's not fool ourselves into thinking we have power that we don't really have. And let's focus on owning the power that is ours. That is honestly and truly the way to emotional freedom.
So there you have it. My thoughts on where our power lies. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts as you've been listening. Jody. You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I know.
Good.
Learning my thoughts. So I 100% agree with everything you said there. I think you did a good job presenting. There is, and this isn't a but, but means behold the underlying truth. This is in addition to what you said. I think it's interesting to know that people have in their minds, when you look at people and why they're doing what they're doing, especially in a interaction with people have in their minds a script that's playing. They have a story that they're telling, and we tend to impute motives to people from our own story, and we don't always understand what they're going through. So, in addition to what you're saying about not about owning your power and not giving your power away, you also got to keep in mind that people reacting, they're reacting in ways that make sense to them, that make sense to their narrative and their story that they're telling. And so you got to be cognitive of the fact that just because it doesn't, their behavior, their reaction to what you say or do may not make sense to you, but it could perfectly make sense to them, and be a little bit understanding and forgiving, and really try and, if possible, try and understand where they're coming from, what their story is, and their frame of reference there.
Yes, I love that. Thank you. That's a really, really good point. We all have stories that we're telling, and that's the perspective we're coming from, and everybody has the exact same thing. Thank you. And Terry wrote on here, I think it is difficult to not feel like you can control others. Sometimes it just feels like if you say it right, you can make others see it your way. That can be hard. Yes, such a good point. We really think and want to believe that if we just say it this way or pound it in so much more, that it will make a difference. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. I totally get it. Thank you. Kent Jordan.
Yeah, well, it is in fact the case that people are often open to persuasion, and we're supposed to be trying to influence and persuade one another. In the faith tradition that many of us share in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there's scripture that says that it behooved a specific leader to try the virtue of the word of God, for that had more influence over people than anything else, even the sword, right? There's this idea, and it's a true idea, that words do matter and that we can influence people for good with our words. So I don't think there's, I don't think there's anything inconsistent with what you've said, and the notion that we are supposed to be trying to, as we speak in our own minds to ourselves, because we're always engaged in a conversation with ourselves, I think, and in our conversations with other people, trying to direct our words in a way that is most likely to have a positive influence, an uplifting, an encouraging, a truthful influence. So I hope that's not inconsistent with what you're saying. I don't think it is.
I
It's
don't,
not, it's not giving power away. But it is recognizing that we do have influence. We have influence on ourselves, and we do have influence on others, and we ought to be trying to do that and use that in a wise and an appropriate way.
yeah, I agree. And I think the problem comes if we think or feel like we need other people to respond in a certain way in order for ourselves to feel good about anything. I think that's where the problem comes in. We are absolutely, I believe we can and do influence each other. But ultimately, every person gets to decide how much they accept that influence and whether they pick it up or not. And so 100%, yeah. But we can't need other people to respond a certain way in order for us to feel good about ourselves. That's kind of the point that I was trying to make. But I agree. Thank you.
There you have it. Thank you for watching. Please hit subscribe if you enjoyed what you heard, and stay tuned for more inspiring videos. You can also find my website at lifeinspiredcoach.com. Thanks again.